Thank you.
Thank you. Hi everyone. My name is Karli Williamson. I am super excited to be here. I would love for y'all to introduce yourselves in the chat. Maybe give your pronouns, give a few emojis about yourself. Welcome has some emoji options, or you can open up your emoji keyboard if you feel like those aren't enough to express yourself. I'll introduce myself. So my name is Karli. I am a great hype woman. I will be your biggest cheerleader. I'm an aunt to 3 nieces and 3 nephews. Oh, hey, Frank, I know you. 3 nieces and 3 nephews. I am also a B2B SaaS marketer, a career coach, a ceramic artist. And you may have seen that viral LinkedIn post about being a barista. That is yours truly. And as of last week, I am also a fully employed marketing campaign manager for a company called Decodable. So thanks everyone for joining. Let's get started. So I am going to be going over a few different things. If you could pull up my slides, please. So we're gonna start out feeling, then we're gonna into doing, and then we're gonna get into feeling again. So thinking, doing, feeling. If you know me at all, you know that this is like a pretty typical pattern for me. We're going to get a little woo-woo at the end. We're going to do some reflection. Then we're going to get super tactical in the middle. I have also created this participant guide, which is just kind of like a fancy way of saying a worksheet for y'all. This will give you a good place to make sure, like, if you want to take notes so that you have a takeaway for some of the things that I'll be talking about today, if they help your job search at all. So Ifat's going to drop that link in the chat for y'all. It will prompt you to make a copy that is intentional, so you can copy it onto your personal drive. Let me get that link for y'all. Oh, cool. Thank you. So you can copy it on your personal drive. I will not be able to see it. But again, if you like it, use it. If you don't, that's also fine. All right. So getting into this first topic of kind of this thinking and reflection piece, what is clarity? Why does it matter? And how to find it? So to kind of prove my point, here's a really good quote. I am not a quote person that is like, I don't have it like tattooed on me. I don't have pillows of this, but I am a Conan O'Brien fan. So when I saw this quote, I felt like I just had to share it. The beauty is that through disappointment, you can gain clarity, and with clarity comes conviction and true originality. If you know anything about Conan O'Brien, he is very familiar with disappointment in his career. He was promised a show, had it taken away. He had his show canceled because of low ratings after decades of doing it. He then felt conviction to start a podcast and now has a production company. And he's launching a travel show. Like, talk about a true original. I feel like disappointment is the name of the game in this job market. Like, I know for myself, I've had the disappointment of not getting interviews, of getting through an interview process and then finding out the job was put on hold. Some of y'all may have been laid off for a long time. Some of you might be stuck in your role right now and feeling the disappointment of not being able to get out of that situation. So within that disappointment, like, there can also be time to pause and find some clarity. So before I found clarity, I was like mass applying and it wasn't working, which is where this title came from. I thought that I had clarity. I thought I had a good idea of what was most important to me. But as I was applying, I just wasn't really seeing like that conversion rate, right? Like, we're all marketers. We love numbers. This is over a 3-month period. This was like the first 3 months of my search. I was just like, anything that was interesting to me, I was really prioritizing like an industry or a company that I found interesting or a role, and like was really just throwing everything out, throwing whatever I could. So I took a moment and I paused and I did this exercise, which is in your participant guide. I started by thinking, like, what do I want work to feel like? And what do I want it to end up like? Like, where am I heading? Big picture. And then that kind of gave me like this, what do I want this to look like today, right now? So today, right now, might look like this for you. So on one end of the spectrum, you might want work to feel empowering, challenging, fulfilling. You might want to end up like an entrepreneur, a C-level executive. You want to travel the world. So today, in this next step, it could look like leading a team, trying something new, and having room for growth. Or on the other end of the spectrum, I fall more in this bucket. Maybe you want work to feel stable, to feel interesting, and to feel balanced. And maybe you want to end up being a working parent, having the ability to support others, and having really steady, stable career growth. So right now, that might look like autonomy, flexible schedule, great benefits. Putting that in practice in your job search, kind of taking these abstract ideas. With that first example, this might look like looking at a senior manager and above, looking at a new industry or a new role, maybe looking specifically at company or team stage or size. So getting really specific in, okay, here's what this looks like and what's that practical implementation. And then again, on that opposite end, this might look being an individual contributor, having no direct reports, looking at a fully remote and dispersed team. Maybe you're looking for a company that's really documentation heavy versus meeting heavy. Maybe you're looking for a company that has benefits listed in the job description. I've noticed companies that get really specific about their benefits in their job description, which tells me that they're proud of them, with others that are maybe a little more loose about them. So those can be some indicators of like what is going to be most important to you and how do you actually dig for those things when you are in the job search. So in your participant guide, there is a spot for you to do this exercise, either like now, if you can multitask, I absolutely can, good for you if you can, or you can take this afterward. I recommend starting with this feels like and end up like, and then you can kind of find that middle ground so you can implement that in your job search. Now, after I did this exercise and got a little bit more specific and a little bit more realistic about where I'm at now and what I want things to look like right now, I applied to less things. This is over the same amount of time. I applied to less things. I put more energy into those applications, and I found myself interviewing for a lot more roles. They were more in line with what I was looking for. I was being more realistic about the kinds of roles I was looking for, and I was putting more energy into those roles. So now I'm going to talk about what I mean by putting more energy in. Let's see, did you revise your resume to match closely to those JDs? Yes, I did. I did write cover letters as well. I adapted my resume. I used a tool called Teal, and I tried to highlight different things within my resume that aligned with that role, which was one of the things I spent more time on. If you're familiar with Teal, this isn't a sponsored ad. I would love for them to be a sponsored ad. That would be amazing. But if you are interested in them, I do have a referral link. They make it really easy to do that, but I recommend maybe having like one kind of like all-inclusive resume and then having bullets for different things that you can pull out. I did find that was helpful in making sure that my resume was really relevant to those roles, and also that I felt really confident applying as well. And when I got to the interview stage, I had like really specific examples for them too. So hopefully that helps. Yeah, I love Teal. Okay, so one of the other things I did was leverage my network. And I think that this is a really ambiguous term. I feel like people are like, oh, leverage your network. And you're like, I don't know what the fact that means. So first, let's talk about who your network is. Probably the first group of people that people think of when you think of network is people that you've worked with, right? People that have seen you in action. Going a little bit broader than that in this like tier 2 bucket is people that you've talked to. So it might be someone that you've run into at a conference. It might be someone like on this webinar that you've interacted with. Maybe someone in the demand community. Maybe you've jumped on a networking call. Someone that you have talked to but maybe haven't worked directly with. Going broader still, these are people that you're aware of, right? So maybe like a thought leader, maybe someone that you see posting in the demand community, you see on LinkedIn. Maybe it's like a connection that your tier 1 has, but so you like know who they are, but you haven't necessarily interacted with each other. And then like kind of this broadest bucket is these untouched connections. So maybe you're not even aware of them, but you have something in common. So Maybe at some point you connected on LinkedIn. Maybe they are in the demand community, but you haven't actually talked to them. Maybe they are someone that is like a second connection on LinkedIn that's connected to someone that you know really well. So this is kind of that bucket that I think of when I think of my network. But when it comes to leveraging your network, you aren't going to treat someone that you've worked with and that you know the same way that you're going to treat a stranger. So the way that I kind of started to think about this was like that tier 1 and tier 2 of people that are familiar with you and know you. How can I make sure that I'm leveraging those people and making the most out of when they reach out to you and are like, let me know how I can help? Like, I know that I got that message a lot, and I wish that I would have been really specific with some of those people, especially early on in my search. So my recommendation is be really specific in your asks. Ask for referrals if you see a specific role that they are connected to or a hiring manager. Ask for public endorsements if they can, write a LinkedIn reference or whatever that is. I got references that I got in writing to attach to my resume. I've had people ask people to comment on my posts with like praise, to repost my open to work thing and have a public endorsement, or introductions. Maybe it is someone that that's in that tier 3 that you haven't met yet, that you kind of want to bump up, you want to leverage them. And then there's other kinds of support, right? Of like, can we have a monthly standing call so we can stay connected? Would you be willing to review this assignment that I had to do for this role? Can you just text me and ask me if I'm okay, right? Like, give them a list of the like job titles and job descriptions that you're really looking for and ask them to keep an eye out. Like maybe they run in circles that you might not be familiar with and see if they can send you job postings. Just be really specific in what you are asking of these people because they know you, they have interacted with you, and these people can probably make a big impact on your job search. Tier 3 and 4, so that kind of like you might be aware of some of them, you might be unaware of some of them, you have some sort of commonality. These people I think get missed in this like leveraging your network. And I think it's because people don't really know how to go about it. They're asking kind of like these ambiguous things. They're like, hey, you don't really know me, but would you mind doing this? So in this instance, make sure that you stand out. I think the piece, again, that gets missed is this like why they should care. So you start with like how you know them, like, hey, I saw we both like follow Karli on LinkedIn, why you're contacting them. I've been really interested in your company, or I saw that you're hiring for a product marketer. I send in my application. Would you mind flagging it to the recruiter? They don't know you. Like, why should they care? Why should they take that extra energy and step? So adding that step in before you ask them to do something for you can let them know a little bit more about you and a little bit more about why they should take time and energy out of their day, or maybe even like risk their reputation because they don't know you and they're putting in a good word for you. So in your little guide, this is a message that I started using of kind of that cold outreach to people, whether it was someone that I saw was hiring, they posted it, and someone I follow was connected, whether it was the hiring manager listed on like the job description or the job post, or someone that was like connected someone with the role. And I found that this isn't a hard and fast number, but like 80% of the people that I reached out to, I had some sort of response from, whether it was like all of a sudden I'm getting an interview request, or an introduction to someone, or once I even got feedback from the hiring manager of why they didn't think I was a good fit for that role. And that gave me great insight because the experience they said I didn't have, I actually did have. So I got to go back and say, how am I not reflecting this in my resume? So the way that I've outlined this is I start with that, like how you know them. So again, like, hey, I saw we're connected on LinkedIn. Hey, I saw that we're both in the demand community. I'm reaching out because I saw that your company is hiring for this role. My background is in, or I have X number of years of experience, like some sort of like, here's a little bit about me. And then my accomplishments include, this is the why they should care. So something you did which resulted in a metric. You can pull this directly from your resume, like don't reinvent the wheel. Pick a few bullet points that feel really applicable to the job, the role, or maybe even the person you're talking to if you know that you'll report to them or work really closely with them. For example, if you're reaching out to a salesperson within that company, versus like, and you're looking at a product marketing role and you know that you're going to work really closely with them, or a field marketing role, you can make sure that some of those blurbs include you working closely with sales. Maybe it's an ABM campaign, maybe it's sales enablement. And then by the time that you get to that, what do you need from them? They already like give a shit, right? Like they have already evaluated your experience. They've already decided, oh, this seems like someone worth flagging. This seems like someone worth giving a referral to, doing an introduction to a hiring manager, maybe even like giving feedback on your resume, hearing more about the company, right? And then feel free to reach out to me here. Here's my email. So if you are asking for an introduction, you're making it super easy for them. But that why they should care will give you a much higher likelihood of getting some sort of reaction versus the probably super bland reactions or messages that they're getting, if any. I don't think a lot of people are even messaging people. So this will really help you stand out. You may have noticed hopping on a call is not listed. This is not a great ask, right? This shouldn't be the thing that you jump directly to. Is like, hey, would you be willing to hop on a call? They're like, why? That's a lot of time and energy. Some people aren't a big fan of communicating like on a call. It's just not like, that's not the ask that you want to open with. You can add that to the end of like, or I'd be happy to jump on a call. Going blindly into a call as someone who gets asked to do networking calls, like some of those I get are just like, hey, I saw your post. Like, I would love to chat with you. When are you available for a call? I am going into those super blind, and either the person has no agenda and they just want to chat, which is great, or someone has a very specific agenda that I am not prepared for. They have really specific questions. They want to know about my experience. They want me to introduce someone. They want me to review something for them. And so just making sure that this isn't your ask and adding it as like an option, again, I think will get you a much higher like conversion rate on that outreach. Bonus points is in that participant guide, maybe start listing out some people that you can start doing this with, especially that tier 1 and tier 2 of like the referrals, the introductions, the public endorsements, and then see if you can dig around in that 3 and 4 to make some connections and try and kind of like push them up in those levels. This would be a really good place to start so you can start practicing making those asks. Okay, so you've gotten clarity, you've honed in on your search, you are leveraging the shit out of your network. Now all of a sudden you're getting interviews and you are feeling insecure or unprepared. So this is the point where I would be like, oh my God, it actually happened. Now what? So I started doing some things, and I have this in your participant guide again. Oh, thanks for the reference, Gary. I'll have to look at that. So I first practice a concise about me. As you already may have noticed, I have a little bit of a tendency to ramble. And I found myself just kind of listing things off and not really telling a story or connecting the dots. So I started practicing this, and I make a doc for every role that I'm interviewing for so I can have like a little cheat sheet. And I would make sure I'd put a couple bullet points under the about me and just really tell a story. So to give a brief example, one of the things I would say is like, hey, I'm Karli. I have over 6 years of experience in B2B SaaS. I started that journey working for a early age startup running their event and field program. I got to learn a lot there. I worked really closely with sales and demand gen, and got to really target some new verticals and some really specific accounts for them. From there, I decided I wanted to go out on my own, work with different stages and sizes of companies. I got a lot of really great experience and exposure to, how different sales cycles affect the marketing strategy. And I'm really interested in this role because I really enjoy bridging the gap between sales and marketing. I told a story, and then I told them like what I'm good at, while I was also telling, like, connecting the dots of like, this is why I'm interested in that role. I might add some more information if I were actually in the interview, but Again, it's kind of like, let me lead you through where I'm at and why, while highlighting a few things that are really relevant to that role. Then the usuals. I was so embarrassed and felt so silly when one of my first interviews, they asked me like the very classic questions of like, what are your greatest strengths? What are your weaknesses? Tell us about your communication style. I was so unprepared to answer those questions, and it was honestly really embarrassing. So I recommend making sure that you have answers to those ready to go so you don't have to feel dumb. And then the biggest thing was the situations. So I started outlining 3 to 4 projects or campaigns, putting those in my doc that I felt really proud of, that I felt like I could speak to, that I had results that I could like quote off really easily. And then I would map it to bullet points from the job description. So, if one of those things is working really closely with sales, I would make sure I had a note about like, make sure you bring this up about how you worked with sales. If it's about copywriting, mention like, and I wrote and executed all of our email and social campaigns, just making sure you have some bullet points under there. Maybe it's the challenge with that. I can't tell you, like, when someone's like, tell me about a time when, it is as if I have never worked a day in my life. Like, my brain goes completely blank when someone asks me that. And so having that piece has made me feel so much more prepared and confident in interviews. So I highly recommend that. I also could talk forever about what questions to ask, but I also had an instance where someone left me like 20 minutes for questions and they gave very brief answers. And so I found myself scrambling to keep them talking and ask more questions. So I would be prepared with like 10 questions for everyone you talk to, just in case there's someone who's very brief. I like to ask multiple people I'm interviewing with at different levels the same question. So some of the things I ask are like, what are 3 words you would use to describe the team? And then I ask, how are decisions made? And I find that one to be very interesting, from like an IC to a manager to a C-level exec, just to see kind of like how people answer differently, and if that's going to be a challenge for me. Okay, I told you we would end woo-woo. So listening to what your tummy is telling you. As you may have seen in that viral post, I got a barista job. I decided to get a part-time job. And the reason that I decided to do that is I realized that I was interviewing for and applying to jobs that made me feel dread. I would apply to something thinking like, I will probably get an interview for this. I'd be interviewing for something. And the thought of getting it made me feel dread. Also, the thought of not having income was making me feel dread. And I'm not talking anxiety. I'm talking like that deep gut, like, holy shit, I don't want to do this. Or, oh my God, what am I doing? Like deep dread. Oh, this is my cat Blair. My like deep dread that lives in your gut. When I started thinking about the idea of getting a part-time job that was just kind of like a fun thing to do that I didn't have to take home, I felt so much relief. I could feel like my body felt lighter, my shoulders dropped. I also realized that I started being like, once I started doing that and getting some income and just having something to do with my time, I realized that I started being more discerning in my search and felt like I had a little bit more agency over what I was looking for. So I think like whatever you can do to give yourself some relief, like fuck what anyone thinks or how you might feel about being like, oh my God, I haven't been a barista since I was 23 and here I am doing it at 35. Like if that feeling is relief, like follow it. Okay, then I'll ask some questions. Please feel free to DM me on LinkedIn or ask questions. I will answer questions. I have some resources in the bottom of that doc. So I go a little bit deeper into these things in a few different posts on LinkedIn. I also have that linked there if you want to DM me and chat. I also have that link to the BuzzFeed article about bridge jobs, a Teal referral link. I don't like get anything out of that, but I think you get a discount if you use it. And I highly recommend looking into it. It's got a great job tracker. You can use AI, that ability to like tweak your resume is so much faster. So I recommend just like taking a look at it. And then if you're not in the demand community, I also have a link to that as well. Okay, so I'm going to look at some of these questions. I was curious interview questions. We're going to tell me about a time when one job, but have 3 to 4 jobs on your resume. Is it important to draw examples from all jobs? I think some of the feedback that I've gotten was,
Can you read out the question for everyone?
Oh, yeah, so sorry. Yeah, I will read it out loud. Thanks. Okay. Was curious with interview questions regarding tell me about a time when. What if you have most valuable experience from one job but have 3 to 4 jobs on your resume? Is it important to draw examples from all jobs or just the one job based on their questions is fine? I have found that people tend to be the most interested in the work that you've done recently. So I usually try and keep that to something I've done in maybe the last 1 or 2 roles. So I would focus more on what is most applicable rather than the timing in which you did it. I also don't think that it's super important for you to say when I was at this job so that they can look and be like, that was 3 years ago. Something that I've done is just say like, oh yeah, when I worked on this campaign, or like, I was doing consulting, so with one of my clients. And I don't think the timing matters as much as the relevance. Okay, let's see. One thing I felt that really helps is sharing your screen to showcase your work to stand out. Do you recommend this? Oh, that's really interesting. I think that it would depend on the role. Like, I think if it's something like, really design heavy, if you are involved in like, let's say product marketing and you've put together case studies, copywriting, I think that could be helpful for sure. There are some roles where maybe not as much, and they're maybe more interested in like results. So maybe something like, demand gen, I would say like event and field marketing. So yeah, that's a really interesting recommendation. I would certainly say if you find that it's applicable and you found that it helps, that I could see that being a helpful way. I would just say make sure that it's a two-way conversation and it doesn't feel like a presentation unless they have asked you for a presentation. We have a couple minutes left. Does anyone else have any questions? How much time did you spend filling out profiles? Like in Workday. Oh, bleh. Workday. Not a fan. I'm sure anyone that's been applying is not a fan. I try to keep things like really in my resume as much as possible. And I found that tweaking my resume with just like, moving different bullet points that were most applicable is something I spent time on a lot more than like building up a profile in Workday. I would just kind of copy and paste. What do you recommend for follow-up email communications after the interview call? Yeah, so I usually keep it like fairly brief and just say like, thank you. Maybe highlight one thing that you liked or learned about the company or the person, like, hey, thanks for being candid about this. Like, it was really cool to hear about the company values. And then I would just say like, please let me know about next steps. Like, I look forward to hearing from you. So I usually keep it pretty brief, but try to give something that shows that I was like paying attention. Okay, we're at time. Aoife, do I have time to answer a couple more questions? Is that cool? Yeah, okay, sweet. Vanessa said, I'm starting to do freelance work and paid advertising while I job search. How can I showcase my work as valuable and transferable to potential employers or other agencies? Yeah, I think that's a great move. I think a lot of people are doing that right now. I like created an LLC, or I've put just self-employed on my resume as my most recent employment, and have just started listing that experience out as I've done freelance over the last couple of years. I think, I guess it would depend on how relevant your work is. I would say if it is not relevant, don't put it on your resume. Like, I had someone have a comment of like, how are you going to explain having a barista experience on your resume. And I said, well, I'm not going to put it on my resume because it's not relevant to the jobs that I'm applying for. Like, unless I'm looking to be like marketer for Starbucks, it's probably not relevant, right? So I would say if it is relevant and transferable, I would highlight it and make sure you use similar language from the job post to connect the dots for them. Okay, how do you follow up with an application submission if no recruiter or manager is listed? I hate that. I would try and maybe find someone on LinkedIn if you can, if you have any sort of direct connection. Otherwise, like I think that it sounds like they don't want to be contacted, which is really unfair. But I wouldn't spin your wheels on trying to dig for someone if it's not super obvious. I really hate that though. I've gotten like no reply rejections when I really wanted to understand why I wasn't considered. So yeah, I'm sorry that you get stuck in that situation. What about gaps when you don't list certain jobs that are not relevant? I think I'm finding that gaps don't seem to be as big of like an issue as they used to be. I think especially with the job market and pandemic, I think companies are a lot more understanding when you don't list something there. If it's like a 3-year role, you could list that maybe at the bottom and do like in order of relevance versus like chronological. And I would just list that on your resume so that they know like you did have a job. Maybe don't add any bullet points, but just like show that you had experience. I use years rather than months in both my resume and LinkedIn profile. Makes gaps less obvious. Oh, that's a good point too, Gary. Let's see. Is there a separate job application strategy for larger companies? They have longer interview processes and prefer references more in my experience, and traditional job application on website hasn't worked. Yeah, I started adding like a references and praise page to the end of my resume. With some people that like may work at maybe some prominent companies or whatever. I started adding that to the end of my resume. I guess I can't say for sure what the direct correlation is, but I do think that gave them some insight into working with me. If you mean references by like working with specific sizes of companies, I think that, referrals. Sorry, Siva, can you give maybe a little more context with the referrals? Longer interview process and prefer referrals more in my experience. So the referrals piece, I would definitely do that like kind of tier 3 and tier 4 standout strategy as much as you can. So I would try to contact someone that is affiliated with someone that works there, that's within the company. That cold outreach, that email has worked for me where I didn't have any connection to the company. So I would try and do some sort of outreach. And then I would just make sure that you feel really confident in your resume and that it feels like it really stands out. Unfortunately, with some bigger companies, they aren't even interested in referrals right now. So that one's a tough one, but I think just making sure that you are doing what you can to find a referral and then making sure that you feel really confident about your resume. It looks like that is all the questions. Yeah, thank you all so much. This was really great, and I really appreciate all the questions. Again, feel free to DM me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to like chat with anyone. And drop your LinkedIn in the chat so y'all can become a tier 3 contact together. Thanks, Frank.
Amazing. Love that, Karli. Thank you so much for the session, and thank you everyone for keeping the great questions coming.
Cool. Thank you all so much.